he's going to get started here. So, Dr. Dan, I asked him to, and I gave you both sets of questions because there were some on here that he was going to address. He's not specific to behavior change, but he's definitely specific to the success question. So
I'm not prepared.
He's not prepared, but he's always so good even when he's not prepared. So we're going to try to go in order, but we may jump around. So the first question is about childhood, looking back, key positive and or negative people or situations that had an influence, kind of thing.
Like I said, my childhood I think I had a pretty good childhood. I grew up in Panama, like not Panama City, Florida, but Panama, the country. And we lived a middle class life. My dad was an architect, engineer, and a contractor sometimes. And so we had a good middle class life. We would come to the U.S. on vacation, like for summer vacation. And we would go to back then Panama had a canal zone, which was an American-owned cities and whatever, and we would pay, and we lived in Colon in Panama, and we would pay tuition so that I could go to American schools, I never took a Spanish class in my life, but I learned Spanish at home, and I started, back then they called it nursery school, but it was pre-K. So from pre-K on, it was English, pretty much English education.
So you felt Americanized.
I am very American. So then people say, you grew up in Panama. So I never felt never felt like I belonged to either group, really.
Right, yeah. Because
I was too gringo for my Panamanian friends, and I was too Panamanian for my gringo friends. So it was never a good, So anyway, and my mom, like I said, my mom was a little bit of she would criticize a lot. So I think that affected my self-esteem. And to this day, I'm not like the most, confident person. I mean, I'm comfortable here. There's situations that I don't, I have done a lot of self-help. I have found that and I've done a lot of things that people would consider dabbled in Scientology for a little bit. And people are like, ooh, but yeah, and to be honest, I think that changed my life. It kind of let me know what was possible.
I don't know anything about Scientology.
Well, and honestly, it's just, I didn't want to get into this, but in Scientology, there's Dianetics, and it's called Dianetics. And when you talk about spirit and that kind of stuff, all of a sudden it's the religion of Scientology, because you can't talk about spirit without having it a religious connotation. Right. So when you talk about that, then it's Scientology. But the Dianetics part, they teach you how to study. They teach you how past traumas affect how you think, programming, that kind of stuff. So I'm very much into that stuff to this day. But obviously I'm not into You
never mentioned this before as it related to the transformational ladder story. So was that before or after that?
That was right around that time.
Oh, okay.
Which is kind of building up to that.
Yeah.
And going back to that, transformational ladder, is that when you talk about the fall?
Yes.
Okay. So my story, I was a restaurant manager at a Wendy's. I worked for all kind of fast food, but I was 10 years into my restaurant management career, and I did not realize it at the time, but I wasn't happy. And it's kind of hard to say when you're not happy, because you could be miserable and not really know, because you don't know the difference.
You were only 28.
I was only 28. Okay, imagine, have you ever heard the analogy of like boiling a frog? You don't really know until because that's your reality. You don't know, and then you realize, oh man, that was horrible. So anyway, long story short, I am as a manager, I didn't really know how to manage people. I didn't know how to confront. Was very aggressive and doing things that, like today, if you couldn't even imagine me doing certain things. Like I would throw food at some of the, like, what are you guys, and I would throw food at the guys working in the kitchen just because, and yell and belittle, and that was pretty. But because I didn't know it, and my previous managers had all done that, so I'm like, okay, if I'm going to be a manager, if I'm going to run things, I got to do it that way.
Okay, this definitely goes under number 4, negative influence.
Okay, well that's a very negative influence. And I remember one time I made a grown man cry because I was so abusive, and I'm not proud of that. I was so abusive. I came in, I was working the closing shift, and I came in, and I guess they were shorthanded, and I'm like, this is the worst restaurant I've ever seen in my life, and look at this and look at that. This is a mess. And anyway, this guy calls the our boss crying, which ended up getting me a raise, strangely enough.
They encourage
Because, well, they
Isn't
did
there
encourage
some
this.
stereotype like those food shows where the chefs yell at people?
Yes, and they did
part
encourage
of
it.
the culture was like,
Because we know who.
it's high stress, and that's
I got
good.
called into a meeting, I thinking I was going to be in trouble, but they're like, we know who's really running the store over there.
Yeah. Oh.
So they're like, we'll take care of you if you want to,
Wow.
you have your choice of if you want to get transferred to your own store. And so anyway, so I am in this, I'm telling the guys to change the sign on the special. You know, back in the day, all Wendy's had a little special.
Those things that
Yeah.
you put up, yeah.
2 for 1 or whatever it was. They had a little special, and then you had to go up there and put the sign or with a little stick. So and these guys are just playing around and they're joking around, throwing. I'm like, you know what? Expletive. Get down from there. I'm gonna do it myself. So I went up there and
You're on the ladder.
I'm on the ladder and I'm putting up the thing angrily, and I couldn't catch a breath, and I didn't know what was going on. So I said, call 911. You know, and
So you didn't even know what chiropractic was.
I had no idea. Never been. Never
This is
seen
a while
one.
back.
Yeah.
Chiropractic has gotten big just in the last.
No, it's been around 125 years actually.
I know, but you know what I mean. As a culture,
Well, we're more accepting. Yeah. We're more open about it. But anyway, this girl calls her chiropractor, and it's an old guy, and he's like, yeah, I'll wait for him. So I get there. There's no staff because he was there by himself. So he's come on back, and he started working on me. And miracle, I could breathe. So I'm like, there's something to this thing. So I remember, he told me to come back a couple times, and I did. And every time that he worked on me, I was just fascinated, just fascinated by the stuff that he would say. And he would do muscle testing on me, and I don't know if you guys know what muscle testing is, but he would tell me, there's a problem with your adrenal glands. And I was like, okay, what the hell are my adrenal glands? And how can you possibly know this stuff? And he would test, and he's like, okay, certain points, and they would go, my muscles would go weak. It's like, wow, that's crazy. And one day he's off to the side writing something down and I was just sitting there. I was watching him, and here's where it gets silly. And I was watching him, and I was thinking to myself, that seems like the coolest job in the world, and I wish I could do that. And then that's when I heard a voice outside of my head. This was not in my head. It was just like, and I heard a voice that said, well, why don't you? And I almost fell off my chair. I literally, because it scared me. I had never experienced anything like that before, ever. So I'm like, okay, I got to keep it together. Let's get through this visit. So I got the hell out of there. And it's like, okay, what do I do? What do I do? And back in those days, you didn't go on Google. There was no such thing as Google. You had to go to the library.
Right. Yeah.
So I'm like, do a decimal, and you looked it up, and you looked at,
Right.
you wrote down the number, and you went in the card catalog, and
I don't think any of them know.
No, I don't. They don't know what I'm talking about. And I actually got accepted. And 3 months. It was about 3 months later, and everything happened the way it had to happen. Marriage crumbled. Everything ended right when it perfectly. I have to say. And then the next thing I know, I'm starting chiropractic school, and that's.
Yeah, didn't the career stuff fall apart kind of too, like you said?
Well, and what happened was I had decided, okay, I'm going to do this, and by the way, all my friends, I think this is significant, whenever I told my friends what my new plans were, they always shot it down. Everybody told me you're not going to do it, you can't, you're not good enough, nah, you're full of crap, you've done so many things before, and you've never finished anything. And and even my closest friends were probably the worst ones, because they knew me better, and they knew all my mistakes. So I realized, okay, well, if I'm going to do this, I got to do it myself. So I packed up my crap, moved. I asked for time off at my job, because my plan is, how am I going to support? So I asked my job for time off, and I said, well, I'm going to transfer to freaking Atlanta, Wendy's in Atlanta, and I'll do that. So I went, I rented an apartment, I moved in, and I came back ready to work. Turns out that I got fired because there was a guy that was taking money. But the problem was I had not signed off on my register count or something. I mean, they knew this guy was doing something, but they got him, but I didn't sign my safe count or whatever it was. So I got fired. So, oh my God, now I don't have a place. I can't earn money. Well, how's it gonna work? So anyway,
Can I interject for 1 second?
Sure.
One of the reasons I love is, several of you were here for the Wonder Boys thing, which I still need to post if you missed it. But I don't know if you've seen that movie. It's old Michael Douglas and
I don't think so.
Who's the Spider-Man boy? I forget his name. There's several good people. Francis McDormand. Anyway, his whole life falls apart before he gets his act together, kind of thing.
And it almost has to fall apart for a significant change to happen.
Right.
Things have to not work anymore.
Right.
This was at 28, so everything kind of fell apart. Marriage fell apart. Got fired. Like everything I had planned did not work out. Everything I had, like, I'm like, I got this, and I planned it, and everything went to crap. So, and I'm like sitting around, looking around, like, and my friends are no motivational help either, because another thing that we were just, I've gotten over a divorce, so I was going out drinking, like, so, and I'd go out with one set of friends, and then the next night I go out with a different. So nobody knew that I was overdoing it either. I don't think I was ever had a problem, but I was this close to a problem. Okay, yeah. So anyway, so I said, you know what? I'm just gonna go because I was so excited to go to new life.
Right.
So I'm like, all right, I just went. So I moved in. You know, it was probably the toughest thing. And you know what? The third quarter. Plus, I had never done the whole college life, and maybe I was doing a little more. Too much socializing, and I got derailed. One of the things I did is like, okay, this is serious. I really want to do this. I do not want to fail in this. So like, I can't fail in this. So I called a hypnotist. I didn't know what else to do, and I got a hypnotherapy session. I got a couple sessions to not flunk out, and I don't know if it worked or not.
Okay. I
I passed my classes. It was harder, and I was on academic probation for a little bit, and I couldn't get student loans, but I managed to do it.
But you had a positive hypnotherapy experience.
Yes,
That's,
very
again,
positive.
At 28, which was a while back, that's an unusual choice to make.
Well,
right?
but I've always been attracted to different stuff, alternative stuff. I always tell the story. My dad and listen, my dad had a chiropractor. I didn't know this until way later.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, oh, he used to drive to Panama City to this guy that was around for years and years to get adjusted. I never knew that, but he was always into natural stuff. So I remember he got an ulcer because of my mother.
Critical mom.
Yes.
Yeah.
So he had an ulcer, and he had to change his diet. He had to do things. He had to eat certain things, and I'm okay. And then, you know what? When my marriage was going to crap, I drink a glass of orange juice and I'd like bend over.
Yeah.
I went to the doctor and I said, hey, doc, okay, what's my diet? Here's Zantac. I'm like, but wait, how long do I have to take this for? And he's like, chuckled, like,
Yeah.
you're an idiot forever,
It's
of
like,
course.
yeah.
I was, and that didn't make sense to me because my dad did a diet for a certain period of time. He got better, and that was it.
Or really, you need to change whatever's causing the stress.
Right. And he got better. So that didn't resonate with me. So I'm like, okay, I so stuff like that always attracted. I was into vitamins and that kind of stuff even before I knew anything about chiropractic. So this was kind of a good fit. So I almost flunked out and came back from that. And so where were we?
Okay, well, I want us to link this into number 6 because he's already kind of addressed the obstacles, which was number 3, and the positive and negative influences. So, But I'm jumping to number 6 because that's the difference between successful people and those who don't achieve the goals. So you weren't successful, you would describe yourself as not so successful up until that point.
Right.
Your relationships, your career, your
Everything, because I gave up.
Yeah.
That's the thing.
Okay.
I would always give up.
Okay.
It's
So
all
persistence.
it's too hard. But you know what? And number one, I couldn't give it up because I already moved to a new city, and it's almost harder to give up as selling real estate and that. So I was like, I guess I'm good at being a restaurant manager because they're trying to throw money at me for throwing food at people.
That's unfortunate.
Right. So I must be good at that. But but there was I didn't love it. And I love this.
That's made the difference. When you say we're looking at successful people or your idea of success, you gotta love it.
I would do this for free. I'm really good at it because I love it so much. That's the thing. I have friends of mine that they're decent chiropractors, and I'm not saying I'm the best guy. I'm the best one I know. I really don't want to come off as like conceited or overcome. But listen, I've been doing this a long time, and I'm good at it, and I'm better today than I was yesterday because I learned something new.
Yeah, so open to learning.
You have, but okay, it's hard to explain this stuff, but I consider myself an artist. So if you're doing your art, you have to always put everything and more into it. Like and almost take away the stuff that my favorite quote of Leonardo da Vinci was it sophistication is the ultimate simplicity. Oh, simplicity is the ultimate sophistication. So, and Picasso also said, see, I always compare myself to art. Like these quotes really resonate with me. And Picasso, he could do classical. He started off doing classical style paintings, and he was good at it. But as he got to be amazing, he started doing little line drawings. Yeah, because, and the thing is, and he said, you take away everything that's unnecessary. So one more line would have been too much. One less line wouldn't have completed it. So you have to have like a level of perfection. You know, it's like, that's it. And, you know, there's that story about he's sitting in a cafe and some lady recognizes him, goes up to him, could you sign this for me? So he did a little doodle. And he's like, here you go, madam. That'll be $25,000. She's like, what? You're crazy. It's like, it only took you 5 seconds to do that. And he's like, no, madam, it has taken all my life to, you know, but tomorrow I'll be better.
Well, and if I could add to this,
Sure.
number 6, we just watched something about 8 tips for success or whatever. And one of the things that is you're doing it not just for your own self, something like the difference between your chiropractic and because I went to a bunch of chiropractors before I had back surgery, and you were different because you're very individualized. You're looking at the person. And there were chiropractors who did like a standard adjustment, like a textbook adjustment or something. And
Do that
experience
because
with you is totally different.
well, because almost like I'm a I don't know,
Right,
like
you
I'm.
want it to fit for
Yes.
to help people. So
I mean, yeah, I guess. And again, when I didn't know what I was doing, I would do what they told me to do, and it's a certain way, it's a certain thing. Then it was like, well, that I can do better than what they're doing.
right, but the motivation was different.
The motivation's always been different. It was never about money. And I remember going to school and like, I was all excited about like, let me tell you my story and, you know, whatever. And I was, you know, I would tell that story. And then people like, yeah, I couldn't get into medical school. Like, yeah, it's like, and, you know, oh, I hear how much the chiropractors make. And I was like, oh, I didn't even know how much a chiropractor made. That's how, you know, naive, I guess I was. I'm glad I do what I do. I mean, I think I'm good at it. I mean, I think the way my mind is right now is like,
Okay, I want you to have a chance to look at your notes. I want to do this
Okay.
to start.